Hello, and welcome to revision tips for CIPS Level 2 Certificate in Procurement and Supply Operations. This is for Module 3, which is the Stakeholder Relationships, and it's covering Learning Outcome 4, which is to know approaches for conflict resolutions with stakeholders in procurement and supply. So we're now going to think about who is responsible for informing the other party for each of the following factors, and the purpose of sharing each piece of information between the buyer and supplier. So let's look at scheduling difficulties. Suppliers should communicate delays as soon as possible to give the purchase time to draw up contingency plans if necessary. Demand forecasts. Purchasers inform suppliers so they can adjust manufacturing, scale up or down accordingly, and to ensure inventory is in line with demand. Now, trends in cost and availability. Suppliers should inform the purchaser, which can impact on the selling price or ability to meet future needs. Designs and innovation. Teams need to inform procurement and liaise with suppliers to ensure the correct materials and components are available. And new product development is pretty much the same as the above. But conflict can happen between the buyer and supplier, and it ranges from a difference in opinions to something more serious and a long-lasting dispute. The main reasons for conflict between, let's say, staff members can be poor communication, a difference in personality and values, competition for limited resources, or different goals. And the main reasons for conflict between organisations and its personnel are for things like changes to the internal running of a business, which can affect people's roles. Or interpersonal relationships. Managers and workers may have different styles, which can lead employees to have a negative view on the company. External changes, like a downturn in the market or a new competitor, can lead to conflict as the business works out how to respond, and the workers see management as being responsible. Poor communication can lead to conflict if workers misunderstand the message or are given different messages. And performance levels can lead to conflict if a particular worker is allowed to continue to work below acceptable levels and others have to pick up the extra work. And then we've got bullying and harassment. Most organisations will have an anti-bullying or anti-harassment policy in place. And any form of sexual or racial discrimination is illegal. And finally, resources. That can create conflict if they become limited, which increases the competition for them and can lead to resentment if requests cannot be fulfilled. So try and think of a time of conflict that you've experienced in a workplace, either yourself or observed of others. And can you identify the root cause of the conflict and discuss how it was or could have been resolved? We're now looking at the Thomas Kilmann conflict model instrument, which identifies 5 conflict responses. And they're determined by an individual's cooperativeness and assertiveness levels. So if we go up onto the top left, we have the competing response. This is when the individual wants to win and uses whatever power is available to further their own interests and to the detriment of the other person. So essentially, high assertiveness, low cooperativeness. The opposite to that is the accommodating on the bottom right-hand side. The individual will make sacrifices and yield to the other person, neglecting their own concerns. So, highly cooperative, but not very assertive. The worst of them all is probably the bottom left, the avoiding. This is where the individual does not want to acknowledge that there's a conflict in the first place. So they postpone events and withdraw from the issue completely, neither being assertive or cooperative. Top right-hand corner is an ideal place to be when the individuals try to work out what the other person's position is, to understand them from both sides and try to find a creative solution to rectify the problem jointly, being highly assertive and highly cooperative. But occasionally there's a need to compromise. It's not always possible to keep both parties 100% happy. So you try to find a mutually acceptable solution that satisfies both parties partially. The solution addresses the issue, but not as much as in depth as the collaborating. We're now going to look at the steps needed to achieve conflict resolution. So firstly, you need to accept that the problem exists and agree that you're going to address the solution. Be prepared to understand other people's point of view. So you need to sit and listen, because maybe they've got a valid point, but you're so difficult to communicate with that they can't get their point across. And the same could apply in the other way around. Identify changes in attitudes that need to be made to enable a resolution. Recognise the event that triggered the conflict and be prepared to compromise. Jointly agree on a plan to address the cause of the conflict. So what is it? What is it that's causing it? What's the root cause? If you understand what that trigger is, you can try to avoid it in future. Monitor the impact of your agreement. And as a last resort, parties who resist conflict resolution may need to be disciplined using company policy. Now, group cohesion is next. Now that creates a bond between team members, so they unite while working towards a goal. And it works on 4 levels. Firstly, social relations, and this really is about how individuals get along on a personal level. You have the task relations, how individuals get along on a work level. Perceived unity, which is how they work together. And emotions. How do individuals use their feelings to a positive effect? And the factors that are going to affect the group cohesion include, similar values and attitudes, the group size, how much time the group spends together, location, whether that's co-location or not, perceived status of the group within the organisation. Are there any exclusivities or entry barriers? And what's the interdependency of the group members? Consider the behaviour of management towards the group members. The stability of the team within the group, how many people are leaving and joining, the turnover is really important. The threats which can prompt the group to come together, whether they've had previous success before, and whether they cooperate and share responsibility. Now, buy-in is key to stakeholder engagement. We need to identify our internal and external stakeholders and profile them to build up a picture of who they are, the level of interest and the influence they have on the organisation. Then you map each stakeholder's level of interest and influence to determine the best engagement strategy to use for them. You can link that to Mendelow's. Now, the organisation can help stakeholders to feel engaged by involving them in the management processes of the business. Employees can vote on new initiatives, and external stakeholders can be invited to take part in focus groups or surveys. But these are the key questions you need to ask yourself. What do you need? What do they need from you? What do you need from them? How they will be affected by your plans? What influence they have over the success of your organisation's objectives? But also what influence they have over other stakeholders. What's the benefits of your organisations of involving them, and what's the benefits to them for being involved? but equally the risks of involving them and the risks of them being involved. And that's the end of learning outcome 4. Thanks for watching.